Sometimes the quiet moments are the most fun to capture. And I think that's something that I learned in 2023. And I have this camera to thank for that. This is the Fujifilm X-Pro3. I bought it last November for about $2,000, which is honestly way too expensive for this camera, but I think I bought it at the wrongish time. It was when Fujifilm was super popular, and so resale prices were very high. But I honestly have no regrets. It's been the perfect personal camera for me. And so I want to talk about a couple of things, why I like this camera, etc., while I show some sample photos. But let's start with this camera. So the build quality is really good. It feels very solid. I'm hoping that it will last me a long time and make that $2,000 feel a little bit more reasonable. I'll put it close to the microphone so you can hear it. I do really love the knobs and dials. It feels so solid and so satisfying to use. I think this camera gives you like 80% of the film feel, especially with the hybrid viewfinder. So I'll also turn that on so you can hear it. Yeah, it's just it's too good, honestly. It feels fantastic. Also, people are really drawn to this camera. Oftentimes, when I do my street photography or my POVs, no one really comes up to me, nobody really bothers me. But for whatever reason, with this camera, when someone sees it, they're enticed. They are like, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. What kind of camera is it? Does it shoot digital? Is it film? And yeah, it's the first time I feel like I've ever had a photography tool that sparks conversation with strangers, which has been pretty interesting. I also really love the flip screen. I know it's a little bit divisive, but for me, it's perfect. It means that I'm not, checking my photos after I take every single one, which does make me feel a lot more connected to those particular photos. And yeah, I think I mentioned, but if I haven't, it's weather sealed. I've tested it a couple of times. It's been fantastic, especially when we were in London and it was raining a lot. And it has the dual card slot, so I shoot JPEG on one and RAW on the other. I only use the RAWs if I'm shooting professionally, which I have done a couple of times with this camera. So let me talk about that. For professional work, I do not recommend it. I think that you would feel like you were missing something if this was your only professional camera. The autofocus continuous is a little bit sluggish. I would not depend on it. My hit rate was a lot higher when I used single. And the battery life is pretty rough. So I ended up having to pick up one of these almost like a week after I got the camera. But I will say that whenever I have my full frame camera on my Peak Design capture clip with like a 70 to 200, this camera comes in clutch with a 23 millimeter, which is a 35 millimeter equivalent for full frame for capturing, more close up kind of moments, things like that. So yeah, couldn't recommend it as your only camera, but as a secondary shooter, it is really fun because it looks cool, it's pretty. People don't shy away from it, like I mentioned, and it also just lets you kind of, I don't know, maybe feel like you're taking a little bit of a break from working. Um, but let's talk personally. So some of the things that led me to buy this camera and maybe choose it for me: interchangeable lenses, weather sealing, like I mentioned, the Fujifilm film simulations, and the hybrid viewfinder. Those are all the big ones. So the X100 doesn't have interchangeable lenses, so I removed that for me. The weather sealing was pretty big. The Fujifilm recipes simulations meant that I was going to stay in the Fujifilm ecosystem. The knobs and dials are great, as I mentioned. It is USB-C, which means that for the most part, everything I have is USB-C, so I can kind of plug it in with the same thing I would plug in for my phone and my laptop. And I think the thing that has surprised me the most about it are the recipes or the simulations. I think at first I don't know, I just thought that they would be a little bit gimmicky, but I really don't shoot raw when I shoot personally, and I love some of the photos I can get. And one thing that I think I'm realizing is with the recipes, as you dial them in more and more to your liking, your photos feel more and more earned, or like you're more and more connected to them. So it's almost a little bit past shooting film in that sense, because you can't, I mean, yes, you can push and pull film stocks a little bit how you want them to be, but for me the goal was always to find like a low edit, no edit workflow. And with this, I feel like I'm constantly pushing closer and closer to having my like perfect looks right out the box, and that is huge, especially when you're traveling or just when you're working a lot professionally, and so that backlog of photos that need to be edited gets bigger and bigger, and you don't want to add to them. So you pick this up, you take your photos, you download them to Lightroom, and they're ready to go. So it just feels freeing in a way that I didn't think digital photography ever could. And that, for me, is insanely valuable, and it's the reason that I have no regrets getting this camera at all. If I did have to talk some shit, I would say the lens selection is not great. I think that maybe I'm spoiled because I came from Sony when I was working with full frame, and even with Micro Four Thirds, you can pick up lenses. You can pick up a zoom lens, you can pick up like a specialty lens, you can pick up a lot of different lenses for under $150 and get a lot of value out of those lenses. And so to pay $400 for a lens that came out a long time ago, like 5 to 10 years ago, feels a little bit insane to me. But I'm hoping that as Fujifilm realizes that they no longer have a stronghold on the like get your look in camera feature, that they will start to put some love into maybe their lens selection, refreshing some of those options, because I would love to have an 18 millimeter or a 16 or even a 56. And I would love for them to be Fuji and for them to be weather sealed and to have, you know, quick linear focusing motors and things like that. So yeah, that's something that I for sure don't love. I also mentioned the battery life. Yeah, pretty rough. When we went to London, I for sure needed this pretty much every day, like around midday. However, when we went to Japan and I took the Lumix GX85, I um, I maybe only swapped batteries because I wanted to. Like if I had like 2 bars left, I'd be like, okay, let me go ahead and get that other one in there. But yeah, this is the only camera out of all of my cameras that I worry about battery life pretty consistently. But I mean, it hasn't failed me. When I bring 2 with me, I never run out of battery when I need it. So I guess if you're aware of the shortcoming, then you will be prepared. I think that's really all that I have on the negative side. Actually, one more thing, I kind of touched on it. It's too expensive. I bought it potentially at a bad time in terms of prices, but I think right now it just seems like Fuji, I actually don't know if it's still the case, but a year ago when I was buying this, Fuji prices were crazy inflated, and I don't regret paying the price I paid for mine, but it does feel like if this would have been like a $1,200 camera, it would have been, I would have been shocked. This would have been an incredible value, and I would have wanted to shout it from the rooftops. Kind of in the same way that I feel like the Lumix GX85 is an incredible value, or even the Nikon Z6 III. Yeah, it just feels like this is not priced well. And I think that's the case with a lot of Fuji products, especially some of the older ones that have come out a long time ago. But there is like an intangibleness to their products that I don't think other brands really have. So maybe that's what I'm paying for. We'll find out maybe the next year. But yeah, that's really all I have. I'm looking at my notes now, but it's a really good camera. I've enjoyed it a lot. I think that it reminded me, or maybe helped me realize, the importance of personal documentation. And it's an incredibly capable camera for that. So yeah, I'm going to post a POV video from the summer where I took this camera around downtown Durham. So if you're interested in more sample photos, they'll be there. I think there's also maybe 1 or 2 other POVs with this camera on the channel. So yeah, I do really enjoy using it. I haven't made that much content around it, I guess, but maybe that'll change in the future. It does feel like a lot of the photos that come out of this are pretty personal, and so it feels a little bit strange to share photos from, you know, like a family function or something like that. But I also have, you know, done some photo shoots and stuff for friends, like some of the studio shots that you will see we're taking with this camera, and I was really impressed, and it felt really good to like get that in camera. And so then once we were taking photos, we got to roll. We didn't have to, you know, reset anything. I didn't have to edit it later. So yeah, overall just a really good camera. I'm glad I have it, and I'm hoping that it will stick around. Honestly, the only thing that would make me maybe want to get rid of it would be if they don't update any of their lenses. But even if that was the case, I could probably just keep these 2, the 23 millimeter and the 35 millimeter. So who knows? Maybe that's a different topic for a different day. But anyways, thank you for stopping by, and I'll catch you in the next one.